Hey,
Hey, Maria Franzoni, how are you today?
I'm very good. I'm very good. I was just thinking, James, because obviously you and I, when the music is on, we're dancing away, we're
Yeah,
bopping away.
yeah.
And in our green room, our guest today is bopping away. And I think we should make it a rule that if our guest isn't bopping away and dancing to our theme tune, they're not allowed on. What do you
I
reckon? Should we
know.
do that? So obviously that doesn't
Absolutely. There's
apply
something
today. It
wrong
doesn't
if your
apply to.
guests aren't bopping. I mean, that's the point. That's why you
Yeah,
come on
yeah.
this show. You've told me this episode today was about becoming a ninja. So when I first saw ninja, and I thought, do I have to, is this going to be like a new year health, fitness and things? I was getting a little bit worried. I was like, oh, I haven't done much healthy stuff. But thankfully, it's not about being a ninja in your speaking business. And our guest today is the author of the global bestseller, How to Be a Productivity Ninja. He is the founder of Think Productive, one of the world's leading providers of personal productivity training and consultancy. His podcast, Beyond Busy, explores the issues of productivity, work-life balance, and how people define happiness in their lives. Previous roles include Chief Executive of Student Volunteering England, Head of Volunteering at the University of Birmingham, and an advisor to the UK government on youth volunteering policy. Please welcome to the show, Graham Allcott.
Yeah.
Hello.
Hello,
I've
Hello,
just
hello.
Graham.
just finished bopping.
Yeah, fantastic, fantastic. Lovely, lovely to see you, Graham. I mean, I know you, we go back years, and you had a profound effect on me when I met you because I read your book, How to Be a Productivity Ninja. And although I haven't applied everything, I've maintained a lot. So what is it then, would you say, in your experience, that stops people being productive?
I think there's two key things to think about here. One is busyness, and the idea that when it's frenetic and there's so many things going on, it's very easy to grab onto the next email or the next thing to do without really focusing on what matters most. I often say that productivity really boils down to making space for what matters. And the other side of it is people play the wrong game. So people spend a lot of time thinking about time management. And what I spend a lot of time with people helping to reframe it to is the idea of attention management. So rather than trying to manage your time, really focusing on the times in your day, the times in your week where you have your best attention, and putting that to the most difficult, the most creative, the most interesting stuff. Part of that also means that when you're tired and not so great, you can put that lesser attention to more kind of easy stuff. But managing your attention fundamentally it's a bit more subtle than managing time, but it just has a huge effect.
And it did, and I definitely applied that because I had always been one of these time management people. And I'd come back from, I'd come from a management consultancy background, which was, which involves some time and motion, which of
Yeah.
course is all about time and it's attention for sure, and sort of that energy as well. When you have more energy to be attentive, there is something else that I think people are, what's the word I'm looking for? Disruptive. Their productivity is disrupted by social media. What do you think about that?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, social media is a really good example of what fits into busy, right? People just spend every moment just scrolling and getting distracted. And so I think there's something about, when I rewrote How to Be a Productivity Ninja as a fifth anniversary of that book, my publishers were saying to me, what's changed? And I said, pretty much nothing in terms of the fundamentals of how to manage attention and the kind of structures that we need, and how once you start to put and apply really rigorous thinking and get specific on stuff and get a really good sense of what the project is and what the action is, once you do all of that, it helps you to be productive. But I said the only thing that has changed in the last 5 years is I just noticed that people spend more time scrolling and less time actually just allowing space for thoughts. And when you think about where do you have your best ideas, you don't tend to have your best ideas at your desk. You have them in those moments when you stood in the checkout queue, or sat in the car or walking along or whatever. And so if we're filling all of those little spaces with more scrolling, then actually we're doing ourselves a disservice in terms of solving the biggest issues in our work and in our lives, right? So I think for me, that's a really important thing. And I'm very mindful of how I use my phone and social media. So Instagram is, they say like Tinder is the most deleted app on the planet, because people kind of get excited about matching with people and then they get a bit dispirited and leave. My most deleted app for sure is Instagram, right? Because I go on it mainly for work, and then when I'm there, I feel myself just getting hooked into it. And as soon as I have that feeling that it feels less in control for me, I delete it. And I also use an app called Freedom, which kind of blocks a lot of other stuff, so I don't get email notifications and all this sort of other stuff as well. I just think it's a huge challenge, and I see a lot of people, talk to a lot of people who have this idea that, well, I will use my willpower and just be better than that. And then you realize actually the brightest and best minds on the planet are employed in Silicon Valley with one job, which is to rob as much of your attention as possible. So when you realize what you're up against, you have to really take that seriously. And the idea of just using willpower on it, for me, is just like, that's for the birds. Like, we really need to see that this is something that we have to take very seriously.
I remember when I was working in Silicon Valley, and I was at a dinner one night, and I was sitting next to a developer who worked for one of the big social media companies. And I looked over to his phone, and it was interesting because the first thing I noticed about his phone was it was in black and white. He'd tweaked it in some way. So he took all the color from the phone, because he said, we engineer it in such a way that we go for those reds, those hot colors to make people do things. And the other thing he said was that it had no notifications. All the notifications had taken off all of those things as well. So something we do seem to have happened, and I think pretty much everyone's been thinking about it for these past 2 years or so, is this idea of work-life balance. We've had to kind of reassess what that might look like today. And for some of us, it's been very nice to have a little bit more life. For some of us, we've had a little bit more work. And so what are the ways to ensure a good balance between those two things? Or should the idea of work-life balance, is it a fallacy? Should we just be looking to go full on for work for a little bit, full on for life, and then that's the way it works?
Well, I mean, it's a really interesting thing. A lot of people talk about work-life integration rather than work-life balance. And I use the term work-life balance because it's what people understand. But I think that there are times there've been times in my life, and there are also just times, in an average week, where I'll be much more full on, in terms of my focus is my work. And then also times where I'm really all in on leisure and family and downtime. I'm pretty boundaried personally around not working weekends, not working evenings. So I do keep some quite firm boundaries myself around that stuff. But I think the other thing that people often miss is that often the way that people think about their home lives or social lives or personal lives is, I'm going to go to work, I'm going to do my day's work, and then I'll manage all the rest of it. I'll manage the personal life, the social life, all that stuff. And consequently, what you're doing is you're leaving yourself with a depleted level of energy left to manage what's actually the most important stuff, right? So what I say to people a lot is, take your personal life, take your leisure time, take your downtime and your chill time, take that as seriously and plan that as seriously as you plan your work time. So, people have said to me over the years, like, how come you always get Wimbledon tickets? It's like, because I take it really seriously when the ballot is. I put it in my diary just as I would a work deadline. And, I think there's always those things that, to create really amazing memories and to create really incredible opportunities often in life, like, you have to put a bit of work in, you have to research stuff, you have to figure stuff out. And, I take that as seriously as I take my work. And for me, that's a really important thing in just living a more interesting, more fun, and also more relaxed and present life.
What about you, Maria? How do you think about this whole kind of work-life balance? Because I know for many years you had a very full charging kind of work with the bureau and everything like that, and more recently you've kind of made quite a lot of changes in your work.
He does this to me, Graham. He puts me on the spot, right? Because you saw that I was pointing to myself. I'm bad at the work-life balance. I've always been bad. The problem is with me, Graham, is that my work is my passion, and so I love it. Yeah. And so people say, oh, if you're passionate about it, it doesn't feel like work, and it's true. But I do need to prioritize, because I've got to think about the fact that I've got other people in my life who actually would like some time with me and would like some quality time with me, not when I'm feeling drained or depleted. So what's changed for me, James, is that certainly my life is less stressful because the new work is less stressful, actually, interestingly enough. And it allows me, I can step away from it and actually close things off. I can actually, I've planned a week's holiday and I'm going to switch everything off. I couldn't do that in the bureau world. You can't do it, because with bureaus, as soon as somebody doesn't respond, they go to the next bureau, the next person. Do you know what I mean? So it's going to be better. And I'm going to take some of Graham's advice and actually prioritize and plan, because I'm good at planning. I'm going to plan my free time better. Thank you.
Nice.
So here's the other problem I have. And I don't think you have this problem, James. I can't switch off. How do you switch off? I just can't stop.
Well, I mean, that means so many things to so many different people, doesn't it? So let's just maybe take 2 or 3 of those. So, I mean, one really obvious thing you can do, I mentioned before, the app Freedom on your phone. So just in terms of thinking about trying to switch the world off a little bit and some of that new information that comes in. And, I think humans are naturally very curious species, right? So when new information comes in, it's like, oh, what's happening? Who loves me? We're curious. We want to find out at that moment. So switching on something like Freedom, which blocks a lot of those things. And I have notifications off just as a general principle, but it just also just turns off things like the WhatsApp stuff. And, all those things just don't come in then. And also, like, it can restrict access to stuff. So there's like certain times of the day where if I've got Instagram on my phone, I just literally can't open it. Like, go to open it and it just just defaults back to the screen. And the same, actually, Freedom also works on laptops. So at certain times in the day, if I go on to the BBC football website, it just comes up with a green screen with the Freedom logo, which is like a butterfly, and it just says, "You are free. Go do something important." Right. And I allow myself that in the afternoon, but in the morning, which is my more productive time, I just have that set that just if I ever go onto the BBC website, it just goes off. So that's a way of switching off. I think just a real practical thing is if you're sat in bed and you can't get to sleep because your mind is worrying and you can't switch off, the most important thing with any ideas and any data is get it out of your head as quickly as possible. So have a pen and paper by the bed and just write that stuff down. And psychologists call this distributive cognition, which basically means once you can see it in front of you, your mind lets go of it and it's easier to actually process it and work with it. So just having something just that gets that stuff out of your head at the time it comes into your head. And then I think for me, it's also about, what can you do to put your mind in a different state to the work state? So in perhaps more of a flow state, for example, like if you're, playing five-a-side football or other sport, what tends to happen is your brain just goes into this kind of, you're seeing the shapes and you're seeing the passes and seeing the people. Or is it going just for a walk in the woods and just getting really immersed in, because nature's really, it's full of data, isn't it? Like there's so much data in nature, but actually just it puts your brain into a different relationship with that data than it is if you're, reading emails on a screen. Other people it's swimming, other people it's running, other people it's cooking, dancing, whatever that thing is, or those things are that put your mind into a different state. I think that's a really important thing in terms of switching off. And, you mentioned like the last couple of years, I think it's been really interesting how there's been a blur for a lot of people, in work and life has been happening all in the same location and, everything's on the kitchen table and all that sort of stuff. But also a lot of the things that give people that sense of flow or that sense of switching states were just denied to us. The pubs were closed, the gyms were closed, like all that stuff that people do to really switch off wasn't there anymore. And I think, maybe that's made people a little bit more aware of that being a need. And it's a really human need to sort of need to switch off and change states every once in a while.
Brilliant, thank you. We've had a couple of comments. So we've got Kate Trafford, loved Graham's book, How to Be a Productivity Ninja, recommend
thank you.
it to my coaching clients all the time. Juan Carlos is offering to help anybody who needs some help with work-life balance. Thank you, Juan Carlos. Rally, hello, Rally. This is a super session. That's nice because Rally's from a speaker bureau, so that's quite nice, Graham. It's a super session. Rally, get your roster out. Make sure you're booking Graham. Fantastic.
Indeed.
Wonderful. James, I'm sure you've got a good question for us. James.
Well, yeah, no, I'm just thinking of this, the kind of switch off thing as well. I mean, I think that's a great one you just mentioned about having something by...
Are we losing him? Is it just me?
We've switched off James.
We switched him off. Yeah, I think his power's gone. You know, it's like, can you see? James, you're intermittent, my dear. So he was talking about switching off, and it was interesting. So I can't read his mind. We've not that practiced. But let's talk about being a productivity ninja specifically in your speaking business then. And one of the things that's very important. Sorry, James, I think you might be back. We lost you for a bit. You turned into a Dalek.
Oh, great. I'm back. Good.
Yeah.
Good.
So,
I think I was switched off. Maybe something was switched me off somewhere. No, I was just saying. I thought on that comment you made there about having the thing by the side of the bed. I think that's great because I know a lot of people I work with when we talk about that sense of flow, that sense of having ideas and creativity. For a lot of people, it might be they get those ideas first thing in the morning. Other people, it's in the afternoons. Other people in the evening. And for a lot of those people that are in the evening, that in the wee small hours. That's great for them, but it's that ability then to be able to calm that mind down so they can actually get some sleep in as well. So I think that's a great idea, putting those things down on paper by the side of the bed.
Super. So while you were cut off there, we were about to sort of apply this productivity ninja to speaking business, and specifically, I think let's see how we can apply it to tailoring. Because if you're a speaker and you're going to be back delivering lots of speeches this year. 2022 is going to be great. This is what I'm hearing from everybody. Please let me know if you're finding that in the comments. You want to tailor for a specific audience. How can you apply productivity ninja tailoring?
Yeah, so there's a couple of things I always do. The first is when I have the first briefing call with a client, I always kind of say a couple of things. One is like, this is not the only briefing call if you need more. So if other things change, then let me know and we'll talk about that stuff. But what I always do is I always just capture it with a mind map like in front of me, and there's always like certain questions that I want to know. But the idea is that then when I'm then on the train going to that speaking engagement, I've got that visually in front of me, and it puts me back in the headspace of the call and sort of back, almost like in my head, I'm having the conversation with, the client and the other two people from the company who are on the call, and, just putting my headspace into their headspace a little bit. And the questions that I always want to know, just really practical stuff like who's on before and who's on after me, just in terms of like the energy and the mood in the room and that kind of thing. And especially if you're the thing on straight after lunch, like you just need to know that stuff so that you can just tailor the sort of flow of the content and the energy of the content to make sure that it's engaging. I always also want to know, tell me what is the current mood in your business, what's happening in your business, what are the stories that are being told in your business, like that stuff that I know people are walking into the room with. And then the other one I always ask is, at the end of the session, if it's gone well, what have I done or what have I said? So just really getting them to articulate sort of key messages. I had one last week, which is really interesting. There was a guy who he'd read my book. He'd also been on and watched, I've got like a Talks at Google thing, which is on my YouTube channel. And then he'd listened to like 5 or 6 episodes of my podcast, Beyond Busy. And Beyond Busy episodes are an hour long, right? So he's like 6 hours in, plus the book, so he's like, let's say he's 15, 20 hours into my content here, right? So because of that, he's sent me this really detailed email with, I love this and I love that. And that applies, maybe that less so. And it's like, and actually it was amazing because it gave me such confidence that he had confidence in me. But also I was left thinking, but what's the key message? You know, what's like out of all of that? So I always ask that, and you know, and the reason for asking that is there one thing that I've been ultimately that you've booked me for, as opposed to booking someone to talk about marketing or talk about something else? And you know, usually what you'll find out and uncover quite quickly is, hey, there was a staff survey and people really talked about just feeling too busy, or you know, there's something to do with you know, stress levels and resilience that we really want to sort of pull out. So there'll be something like that once you get to the bottom of that, I think it's much easier then to tailor the messages. The other one that I quite like is like the values of an organization, or sometimes it's not even the values, but it's like there's an initiative with a certain name, and there's a way of tailoring some of my phrases or some of the bits of the content to sort of reflect those words back to them a little bit. So like if people are having a year which is about connection, you know, I'll maybe bring connection into some of the stuff where I'm talking about human, not superhero or whatever. So just trying to use their language a bit is the other thing I like to do. And that kind of comes out quite naturally once I'm doing that briefing call. But having that all on a mind map for me, and like I quite often take a photo of it so that just if I lost it, I'm okay. But literally for me, that's what that looks like, is physical pieces of paper that I take with me, which I think when people have read my book and how many apps I use and stuff, sometimes people are surprised that I also, sometimes the best user interface is a pen and paper, right?
I love mind maps. Do you use mind maps, James?
I do. As I was listening to you speak there, I was just thinking I do exactly the same thing with the mind map. I had the client fill out a 2-pager simply because I found after a while it helped them focus. Some people focus really well and actually having to write things down. Other people better verbally. And then we jump on the call. So there's a lot of things that we don't have to ask, or maybe I could just ask for clarification. But when I'm doing that call, I'm doing exactly the same. I'm doing a bit of a mind map. And then from that mind map, I actually extend to it and actually build out the structure of the presentation itself and how I'm going to do it and what needs to be in each place. So as you said,
Nice.
When you're traveling to that place on the flight or the train, you can just pick that up and you go, this is what the conversation, this is what their needs, this is what their values, this is what the emotion that they wanted the audience to feel. And then how does that, and am I ticking all of these things in the structure of the presentation? So I think mind maps are great for that.
Do you have any other favorite questions, James? I'm curious to hear what your questions are.
Yeah, a lot of the similar ones. I ask questions, things like, you don't have to tell me the name of the previous speakers, but can you tell me speakers that you've had, maybe speakers you've had in the past that your audience has either really loved, and also those that they've really hasn't resonated with your audience. So they just kind of tell me a little bit more about what the audience likes and doesn't like. I definitely do. I ask them what is the theme and all those kind of things. But the other two other questions is the 2 a.m. of the people that come in the audience. What is their 2 a.m. problem? What's keeping them awake at night?
Nice.
Because that will help me hit a little bit more of a nerve. Like you, I asked language, lingo. How do you refer to your salespeople? Like pharmaceutical is a perfect example. I did a date for Roche the other day. They don't call them pharmaceutical sales reps anymore. They have a different term that they use. So you can build those in. And the one I still love, and it's for my guiding star, and I don't know if you do this as well, but is that question of when they hear that speech, that presentation, and as they're going out that door or closing down that Zoom meeting, what is the overriding emotion that you want them to feel? And that just goes to that Maya Angelou quote: people will forget what you say, but they should never forget how you make them feel.
Fantastic. I've got to ask you, because all of us are at the beginning of our year, we're all enthusiastic, we've all got resolutions. One of them will probably be to be more productive this year. Are you able to give us, your freedom app's not on, is it? Can I hear a buzzing?
I
It's
did
a gig.
Have
It's a gig. Pick it up.
Someone trying to call me, and I've just
the freedom app wasn't on. Did you notice that? Notifications. Can you give us a couple of tips before we release you?
John,
be more productive.
Tips about being more productive. Okay, so if you're feeling overwhelmed and you're feeling like you don't know where to start, the most important place to start is your own head. Get a pen and paper, dump it all down onto the page, and you'll just immediately feel better as a starting point. The most important, I'm often asked, what's the most important thing in your book, if someone's read my book, to make happen so that you're more productive? And the answer to that is always doing a weekly review. So this is about once a week, getting out of doing mode and getting into thinking mode. So that's about not being the worker of your work, but being the boss of your work, taking a step back. And what that's about is looking at all the projects that you're working on, looking at all the things that are available to you to do over the next week, lining that up with your calendar, thinking ahead, spending a few seconds just thinking about the outside world and what else is going on, and who else needs stuff, and just taking that step back to do all of that as a quality piece of thinking in one go, rather than what we all do, which is we're constantly having some of those thoughts at different moments of the day, but it's very fragmented. That will save you time. So it feels like an extra hour, a couple of hours that you need to add into your week to make that happen. Actually, it just saves you so much time. And the only way I can really explain that is, trust me, just try it a couple of times, and you'll find what those examples look like for you. And then, I mean, just really basic stuff like Marie, you mentioned keeping your inbox at 0. Just being really mindful of what's noise versus what's the really critical information. And the final thing I would say is when we think about making space for what matters, we have to really hone down and be ruthless around what is actually my priority. Like what's the big priority? If you've got 15 priorities right now, you have no priorities. So the way I look at it is you can do one thing in the morning, one thing in the afternoon that are your big priorities, and basically beyond that, like you'll be out of control really quickly if you try and be more ambitious than that. So that's about being ruthless and saying no to lots of stuff. But really productivity is, it's about doing less, but being really purposeful with what you do. It's not about trying to do everything.
Talking about having that weekly reminder, that practice, that prompt, you have an offer to tell us about something you do every week, you put out into the world every week that can maybe help people that are watching, listening just now, kind of focus around their productivity. Can you tell us about that?
What a lovely segue, James, I have to say.
He's so good, isn't he?
It's so good. So I do, so I'm working on a new book right now, and also doing some talks in companies, and actually saying no to quite a few bits and pieces. But one thing that I do every week is I have this email called Rev Up for the Week. So the idea of it is 4:05 p.m. I just picked a time out of the air on a Sunday. 4:05 p.m. on a Sunday, I send out an email which has one idea that's either productive or positive for the week ahead. Sometimes they're topical, sometimes they're not, sometimes they're directly productivity, sometimes they're a bit more down a kind of positive or gratitude or communication or kindness kind of route. But the idea is it's just one thing that's positive, 4:05 p.m. every Sunday, and it's free. And the idea is that will just set you up for the week. So if you want to sign up for that, if you just go to grahamallcott.com, you'll see the little links on the page there, and also the little forms to fill in. And also if you go to grahamallcott.com/links, that's like everything. So there's like the Beyond Busy podcast, there's like my speaking stuff, like everything's all in that one place. grahamallcott.com/links.
Fantastic. Well, Graham, thank you so much for coming on the show today. Even just talking to you, I'm getting excited about getting more productive, getting to inbox 0. That's my maybe task for this afternoon, to get back on that. Thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing about your speaking business.
Thank
you. Thank you.
So Maria,
oh, look at me, I'm all big. Hang on.
How are you feeling after that? Are you feeling very more productive minded?
Well, I'm feeling bad in a way, because I applied a lot of the stuff that Graham taught me from his book and from listening to his speaking, and I didn't keep up with the weekly review. I found that really hard. I'm going to go back to doing that. I'm going to do that. This is going to start this week. So he has changed things. And yeah, brilliant. So we're going to do something new, aren't we, at the end of each show? Do you want to explain what we're actually going to be doing now?
Well, I thought what we do at the end of every show, we'd take maybe 10 minutes or so, just going to talk about kind of what we feel about what we've just heard from those. It also gives us a chance to maybe some questions that are coming in from everyone else here. I know we've got lots of comments coming today. We can respond to any of those. But I just think sometimes we hear these great guests, and what happens is after we finish the episode, you and I stay online and we talk about this. We kind of like, oh yeah, what did you think about that? So we're going to let you in. We haven't got a name for this segment. So if you can think of a good name, I said gut check, which Maria said that's just a terrible name, which I agree.
Horrid.
So if you can think of a better name for this little 10-minute summation segment where we kind of riff on it, please let us know. We're always looking for new ideas. So Maria, we heard that about the productivity. I would love to know what's been your journey on productivity, because you read loads of books. You work with loads of great speakers on productivity. I'm guessing you are someone who has tried lots of different things and techniques and strategies and stuff to be productive. What's been your journey on productivity?
I'll tell you what, my big breakthrough actually was reading Graham's book, because I was always managing time. I didn't know there was another way of doing it. I really was, absolutely. And I had worked as a management consultant for some time. And we used to do things, I mean, I'm this old that we used to do things like time and motion studies. We used to literally try, we'd track lost time. We'd work out how long things took. We'd work out, therefore, we were working productivity out in that way. And it had never occurred to me that actually I shouldn't be managing my time. I should be managing my attention. And that was for me the biggest aha moment. Absolutely the biggest. And the other one where I nearly fell over was when in the book, and I'm not sure if I'm going to quote the right number of hours, so I'm not going to say a number, but Graham tells you that in reality, in your day, you may have an 8-hour day, but actually the amount of time you are productive is very, very much shorter than that. And that gave me a little bit of a whoa. That was a shock. Yeah, that was a shock. So my journey has been one from moving from time management to attention management, and also from trying to do everything to learn how to delegate properly, to prioritize. Prioritizing is hard, and spending that time. But that discipline of planning and reviewing is really important. And when I was a management consultant, we used to make people do these weekly reviews, and I haven't been doing it. That's terrible. What about you?
As I was hearing Graham speak, and I thought, this is anyone out there that is considering also becoming a speaker, this is why speaking is so interesting as a job, as a profession, because someone's going to hear what Graham said today. You heard what Graham said when you read his book, and it impacted you, and you went, that's it. And you implemented it and you started doing it, and it had an impact, a positive impact on your life. Someone else is not going to get that from Graham, but they're going to hear it from another speaker or another author. Because everyone has slightly different perspectives. Some of the content might be very, very similar, but they just have a different way of explaining it, a different perspective, different life experiences. And so this is why I think it's so great that you can have such a diversity of different types of speakers out there that are covering the same topic as well. So I as he was talking, I was kind of going back in my head of all those, and let me know if anyone recognizes any of these books. So The 7 Habits of Highly Successful People. I think that was the very first book that I ever read. And I got a chance to work with Stephen Covey's son recently, Stephen M.R. Covey. Great book. And that was the first time of any type of time planning. And that was probably when I was about 15 or 16 or something. That was a pretty important book. And then a little bit later, I remember probably around 2009, 2008, reading Tim Ferriss's book, where he talked about the Pareto principle, the 80-20 rule, and thinking, oh, okay, well, rather than having all these things, there's maybe a fewer number of things that are more important than others. And then reading David Allen's Getting Things Done, and then going really into like inbox zero, all that stuff. But I just found, for me, it just, after a while, I think it would be great if you're an engineer, you're something with doing lots of individual tasks. But for me, it just didn't work. And then more recently, I've discovered the work of the One Thing by Jay Papasan and Gary Keller. And Jay's been on my podcast. And for me, that helped bring a lot of these things together. And then actually more recently, the thing I've actually been thinking about as much, and I think you mentioned attention, is energy levels. And just trying to feel myself what time of day I have different levels of energy for maybe picking up that phone, doing that deep work. And I think that's a very personal decision. So who knows?
I think they're connected. I think they're
Yeah.
connected though, James. I think you have more attention when you have more energy. I think they're actually probably very much aligned. All the books you've mentioned I've read, so that's really nice. What I loved as well about Graham, and I know this about him, he loves apps. We love apps, and we should have got him to share some more apps. So he shared the Freedom app, which I've not used, but I don't have any notifications on. All my notifications are off.
Yeah.
And it drives me mad when I'm having a call with somebody and they've got ping, 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 ping going. And it's like, oh, for goodness sake, how can you possibly focus on what you're talking about? Do you have notifications on?
I only have one notification on, and that's Stripe for payments, because it makes me feel happy when I see pings and money come in. That's the only one I have on. I don't have Facebook, Instagram, any of that stuff. And in fact, I usually go through a little period of time. I don't have any of that stuff on my iPad, because I just think of my iPad as my reading device. And every so often I'll just go and take off all my apps on my phone and give myself a little bit of a break. So anyone else, any other tools, anyone else got? I know we're seeing some comments here. Kate Trafford, we've got Aisha, Juan, any other.
I'm waiting to see if you're going to read them, because I know you can't see them from where you are.
Maria's eyesight is much better than mine.
It's my glasses. If I do what you do, I can't see anything, just like you. So someone's just said Happy New Year to you. That's very kind of them.
Happy New Year to you.
So Juan is saying, break the habit of being yourself. Joe Dispenza. I've not.
I've heard of Joe Dispenza. I haven't read that book though.
And apparently my desperation was my inspiration for Juan. I hope I'm pronouncing his name right. Fabulous conversation, Kate. Thank you, Kate. We love you. What was it? Collaborate with Mind for Success, being aware of how we talk to ourselves because we are listening. Yeah, that's really good.
Internal dialogue.
Write it down, get it out of your head, Aisha. So everybody's taken a lot from this session. That's
great.
Wonderful. Brilliant, brilliant, brilliant. Fabulous. So,
wow,
James.
Another week. So once again, if you can come up with a name for this little 10-minute thing that we do at the end, please let us know. Leave it in the comments, leave it in the chat, reach out to us. Just go to Speaking Business TV.
He's forgotten.
And contact us through that as well, or just reach out to Maria and myself. We're looking for a name for this little segment.
For our little debrief session, yeah. So our takeaway session, maybe. It might be takeaway. All right. Anyway, bye-bye, everybody. Thank you so much. Do grab a copy of The Productivity Ninja by Graham Allcott. We will see you next week. Bye-bye.